fellow instrumentalists, and welcome to the third trial of Vivaldi's Summer, which of course is coordination. In this video, I'll go over the third difficulty presented in the Presto movement of Vivaldi's Summer. This is specifically talking about coordination. There are a few examples of very difficult coordination within the Presto movement. The first is what I played at the top, which is found in measures 48 and 49. This is especially challenging because not only are our left hand and right hand not in agreement, meaning our left hand does not change every time our right hand changes, but also our left hand is being asked to change on weak beats. Other examples of this kind of movement are found in more ascending passages like in measures 40, 44, 79, and 83. Aside from these kinds of Detache difficulties, there's another coordination passage that's difficult, which is found in measures 116 through 119. In these, we're asked to play very small slurs at a very fast pace. This can be very challenging because, once again, our left hand and right hand are not in agreement. In my third etude of my preparatory packet for Vivaldi's Summer, I addressed both of these concerns, both with the composition of the etude itself and the additional bowing patterns that I've listed above. First, let's look at the composition of the etude. The entirety of the etude is broken up into a single rhythmic pattern that, when sped up, challenges the coordination in both the right and left hand. The first half of the etude has us changing on weak beats, much like in the actual piece. The second half, on the other hand, has us changing on strong beats. Both have their own complications in terms of coordination. Though a rest sits on the ands of most beats, 1 E and a, 2 E and a, on each of these ands, our left hand is still asked throughout the etude to change quickly between notes that are not rested, whether that be 1 E and a, or 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and. In the beginning of the etude, we have the fast changes on the first half of the beat. And on the second half of the etude, we have the changes between the end of a beat and the beginning of a following beat. When practicing for cleanliness in our Detache passages, what we're really striving for is equal timing between our left and right hands. What I mean by this is that in the Detache stroke, in order to play cleanly, we need to make sure that our left hand, or left hand fingers rather, move at the exact same time that our right hand bow changes direction. If we take slowly just one of the scales from Summer, in this case, every single time we change the bow, we are also changing the finger. In the case of these descending scales, we're lifting a finger at the same time. This is a coordination that's unique to Detache. It's perhaps one of the easiest of the coordinations, but it is unique to Detache. If we take an off-the-string stroke, on the other hand, like a spiccato or a collé, we often have to place the left-hand fingers, or lift them, actually a little bit early or a little bit before the bow moves. And in the case of slurs, of course, our bow may not change directions, and yet our left hand has to change. Right, our left hand or left hand fingers have to lift before the bow has to change. Now, in the case of Detache, as we discussed before, our left hand fingers have to move at the same time as our bow changes direction. However, it's not quite that simple. Our left hand fingers also have to make sure that they fulfill their obligations quickly. So when we place our left hand fingers for a change of bow, like in ascending scales, it's very important that our fingers are placed fully and quickly enough. If our fingers are not done stopping the string, or rather are in the process of stopping the string while the bow changes, we get an unpleasant sound. The sound of a finger not fully stopping the string, but rather being in the process of doing so, is often accompanied with a kind of pitch bend upwards towards the desired note. It's very subtle, but listen for that in your playing, especially when you're doing scales that are ascending or that require the placement of fingers rather than the lifting of them. When we're talking about the lifting of fingers with regards to Detache, usually during descending scales, for example, it's going to be a little different. If our left hand is lifting late, we will still get a cruddy sound because our left hand finger is not quite done lifting off of the string, and as a result is actually stifling the vibration of the string. Also, we might hear an actual extra note, almost like a grace note. Again, it may end up manifesting more subtly in your playing, but all of these things, whether subtle or not, are going to contribute to a very unclean sound. When looking at the Vivaldi, particularly in measure 48, part of what makes this passage so difficult is that it fights directly against the habits that we have yet formed. We are so used to changing either on every change of bow with our Detache stroke, or on every strong beat. In the case of the Vivaldi, however, we're asked to do neither of these things. We are instead not changing on every bow, we're changing every other note, and we're changing on weak notes and or weak beats, and even worse, we're changing on up bows. To address this difficulty, the Etude goes a step further, and instead of having the exact same rhythmic pattern, the Etude interjects a rest, making the bowing uneven as well. This change in both rhythm and bowing are going to train the body to do unique coordinations required to make this passage and passages like it in the Vivaldi very clean. I'll now demonstrate the Etude with its baseline bowings. If you'd like to skip ahead to further discussion, feel free to use the time codes below to skip the demonstration. Some performance notes about this etude. The first thing is feel free to accent each of the down bows, or in other words, each of the strong beats of the etude. Also, don't feel the need to hold on to any of the half notes for full value. We're going to just use that to break up the phrasing and make it a little more palatable to practice. Once the etude is comfortable in your hand at a reasonable tempo, it's time to add in additional slurring options. In the first half, we have an optional bowing in which we're going to add a slur to the first two notes of each beat. It looks something like this. In the second half of the etude, we're going to add a slur from the final note of a beat into the first note of the following beat. That one might feel a little bit strange, definitely feels strange for me, but it's certainly going to help improve our coordination. Both of these slurring methods are going to help assist us and carry over that technique into the measures 116 through 119 in the Presto. The coordination required in these measures, as well as the other measures like measures 48 in the Presto and the others sprinkled throughout, are largely responsible for what makes this piece so difficult to master. I would go as far as to say they might be the single most difficult aspect of Vivaldi's Summer. However, that doesn't make them the final difficulty of the summer. In fact, the final difficulty is what we'll be looking at next week. This final trial will be string crossings. If you found this at all helpful and you have your own ideas about how to practice coordination, please leave them in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel, and it'll make sure you don't miss our next video or any future videos. Our next video, however, will be the final trial of Vivaldi's Summer, which of course is one of my favorites, string crossings. Happy practicing!